Great. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar today. This webinar is specifically focused on customers that own the product. Maybe they're not fully utilizing the product, and so we want to highlight how they can get additional value with their investments in ServiceNow with the demand PPM workflows. So we appreciate everyone's attendance today. In terms of your hosts today, we have myself, John Furner, here with ResultsPositive, and we're grateful to partner with our strategic partner RoundTower here with Andrew Gallimore. Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. Andy Gallimore with RoundTower. Actually, roughly 4 years ago, started our ServiceNow practice here at RoundTower. And prior to that, was a customer of multiple aspects, including the PPM and ITBM suites. So definitely a key strategy and topic for me. Glad to partner with ResultsPositive here and looking forward to the dialogue.
Great, thanks so much, Andy. We're all grateful to have you and customers here today. In terms of just overall introductions, RoundTower and ResultsPositive, we've enjoyed a great partnership, helping customers get value out of their IT business management investments and really helping them focus on business outcomes. And so we partnered together to help organizations get access to some of our rapid start implementations around the IT business management solutions. What we typically like to focus on here is how do we drive better value faster for organizations. This is in line with ServiceNow focus here from IT business management perspective. I kind of like to lose the word IT and just focus on business management. How do we manage the investments for the business and optimize our overall returns for the business? So we look here, first we need to make sure we have visibility. What are we investing in today? What are resources working on? We need to have that visibility so we can make the right decisions, specifically in times like today where we have challenging market conditions or even pandemics. We need to have that visibility so we know what we need to stop, what things we need to start working on, because we really need to understand what everyone's currently working on and where we're spending our money. And next, in times like this, as well as normal times, we need to identify what are the right things to invest in. Where should we be spending our money? Where we're going to get our largest return and benefit? And how does it help drive our business strategy? So at this time, this kind of pause in the market, if you will, is a great opportunity for organizations to reassess their strategy, but at the same time identify where should they be investing? How can they best invest today so at the end of the pandemic or the end of the year, that further ahead of competition? And then the third area here is how can we do things faster and better and be able to apply various methodologies to drive value as quickly as possible. And so these are definitely things that ServiceNow helps organizations achieve. Obviously, it's more than just the technology, it's the business practices and processes, but we've been able to assist many customers here in achieving these goals and objectives. In terms of the focus for today's session was assuming that many organizations already own the ServiceNow PPM solution, and many of them have the legacy SKU for ITSA Unlimited. So we can see here in purple are all of the capabilities that you have access to if you have an ITSA Unlimited SKU. Here again, maybe you already have an ITBM SKU, and maybe you have all the capabilities listed here. But our focus today is to walk through the items in purple at a high level based on time, and really focus on the demand and project portfolio management capabilities. So next, we like to kind of highlight the end-to-end life cycle here and how organizations can really get that visibility, make those strategic decisions, and then be able to execute on those investments. And so from an end-to-end perspective, you can start off with your ideation process. That process obviously requires an ability to collect those ideas and also to be able to continually vet and assess those ideas and give feedback. And then from there, you would go into a demand, which is basically a project proposal. At that point, you're looking at really pulling together a business case, aligning to your strategies, prioritizing and categorizing this proposed project, and determining which ones you should actually look at funding. One thing I would note is that organizations don't need to implement the idea and the demand process. You can just go to demand. About 80% of customers typically start with the demand process. And the function is they typically don't have enough staff to support ideation process. But we do see ideation growing more and more with organizations. And then when we have more employees working from home, ideation becomes even more valuable. So we have that demand intake process, which we're going to highlight today. How do we actually prioritize and align these proposals and determine which one's going to benefit the organization most? Then we would go into the portfolio, do some of our strategic planning, be able to align those demands with our in-flight portfolio, and make those decisions on which particular investments are going to help us drive our results, but also which investments fit within our constraints, our financial constraints that we might have, as well as our resource constraints. And then next from there, we would then fund those projects and then be able to start working on the work. What's nice and definitely a differentiator here with the ServiceNow platform is I can manage strategic and operational work. Also, when I'm looking at my strategic work, I can determine what's the best way to manage that. So that could be waterfall or traditional, that could be agile, it could be hybrid, some call it scrum fall, but gives you the ability to manage the work based upon the methodology in the organization and the best way to be efficient in delivering the work. Next at the bottom here, across that full demand and project delivery lifecycle, we have resource management, project financials, as well as time management. So that's kind of the end-to-end process. You do own these components here if you currently have the ITSA Unlimited SKU, or if you have the ITPM license SKU. So what we wanted to do next is highlight a few project portfolio management capabilities, and then we're going to immediately jump right into the demo. Andy, I'll kind of pause there, see if there's anything you'd like to highlight in terms of the idea to value or just overall before we jump in and provide some more highlights.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, and I talked to clients about this, and this is a lot of what I did prior to coming to RoundTower as well. These tools and some of the advantages that we're talking about with demand management and the processes leading up to commitments, business cases, things of that nature, they oftentimes include multiple tools, right? So when we're talking about this life cycle, we're really talking about the ability to condense potentially anywhere from 3 to 5 different tools that are being used into a single platform, and then show the throughput in one single tool. So the compelling event from a client perspective, and this is the compelling event that I had as a client, is the fact that now I have visibility throughout the life cycle, and my predictability is what I'm really trying to drive to. So C-levels and things of that nature are always looking for the predictability of how do I know when something's going to get done? How do I know, from a staging perspective, how long it takes to get something through the pipeline? And most of the time that's so disjointed because it's from multiple systems and there's start and stop points that can't be measured very well. So this allows for a continuous flow of data through a process, and then that gives you the transparency that drives predictability down in the future to even your delivery mechanisms. So, a lot of people are dealing with spreadsheets. A lot of people are dealing with different work items or invisible work that doesn't get tracked anywhere. And these processes will help bring that visibility so that you can actually manage the work that's coming, as opposed to hopefully not having the slap in the face of work that's happening behind the scenes, unplanned work, that type of thing. So these are definitely key strategies, especially in times like this where budget is important and you're trying to understand what's really happening. So this workflow will definitely bring that visibility and also set you up for future predictability.
Yeah, thanks so much, Andy. You're exactly right. Many organizations have a chance to consolidate the number of tools that they're using once they implement a solution here, and then just the power of avoiding some of the integration, say with IT service management or other capabilities on the platform. just starts to provide executives an end-to-end visibility of all the work, as well as all the investments that the organization is working on. So thank you so much. A couple of highlights before we jump into the demo. Here we're highlighting how you can look at aligning those initiatives to driving value. Also, as we mentioned before, really trying to look at those investments and determine which one of these investments are going to drive the best value, but also which investments align to your current investment budget, as well as align to the overall capacity of your resources. So critical items here, especially during challenging times. Next, there's the ability to continue to look at adapting your plans. We all know that things change. Back in the day, we used to always do annual plans. Those still exist, but we're seeing more and more organizations are doing monthly refreshes of their overall plan based on extreme market conditions, but also just ever-changing technology, ever-changing business models, regardless of the current pandemic. It really creates a need for organizations to do that more frequent planning and be able to adjust. What I found recently with organizations is in the past, they would start a project or fund a project or initiative, and then it was always completed. It might have been necessarily completed on time, but it was always completed. Versus in today's world, we really need to look at it as our investment portfolio, and we might need to stop some of those because some of those investments might not be performing, or that particular capability is no longer needed based upon the current market conditions. So we're seeing more of the need of making sure we stop even active investments or projects and shift that investment to more current, more value-added opportunities for the business. Also here within ITBM, you can actually have a couple of access here via the mobile app. So you've got the project status that you can share with stakeholders so they understand the status of what's going on with the various project investments. Also, there's the new Agile app so that you can actually view what's going on with the various user stories in your backlog, make updates to those stories. So now you can start managing that work anywhere via your mobile app. So that's using the ServiceNow agent app. There's a couple of plugins you need to install on your instance, but then you'd have access to both those apps, the project status as well as the Agile app. Also, as Annie kind of mentioned, this whole idea of consolidation, there's a great opportunity here, and we see this as a key differentiator with the ServiceNow platform, is that you can manage traditional projects, waterfall projects, hybrid, agile, all on the same platform. And that way, that kind of really fits more with the way organizations operate today. They have pockets of traditional, they have pockets of agile that could be growing over time, and they might even have pockets of safe. So it supports all of those different types of methodologies so that the organization can deliver things faster. They've also recently released a couple of out-of-the-box integrations, so recognizing that maybe you have various pockets of development teams using other agile development tools, and so they have out-of-the-box integrations. You can see here with Jira and Azure DevOps. This is always also playing into the overall DevOps solution on the platform. And then last but not least, there's a growing number of customers within ServiceNow ITBM. And so definitely a growing solution in the marketplace and being recognized more and more by the industry analysts. We've had some challenges with industry analysts not recognizing ServiceNow because it wasn't a niche solution, but they're recognizing more and more of the end-to-end capabilities here for PPM. So I'm going to start off here with that visibility. So, and what I'm focusing on today is the capabilities that you would have if you have an ITSA unlimited SKU and you don't have the ITBM SKU with performance analytics. We'll be highlighting that in our webinar on Thursday, but here we just wanted to highlight all the power and visibility you'll be able to achieve just by using your current SKUs. Definitely tons of value with performance analytics, but wanted to highlight how you can still get that visibility you're looking for. So here, what we normally do with implementations, we set up various role-based dashboards. So here's a portfolio dashboard where we can look across all the investments, all the projects across the enterprise and view that information. What's really nice in ServiceNow is I can drill into each one of these reports, so I can get to the information that I need to help make decisions. And so what we're seeing here are configured pages, not out of the box, but configured pages using the out-of-the-box reporting tools. So I can put this together. You're seeing here that I can see a pipeline of all my demands and projects, and then I'm seeing those projects we've invested in. I can see those by phase and be able to go in and monitor the overall status. I got an overall enterprise status here as well. I could come in and look at slicing and dicing that information. Where are we investing by applications as an example? Where's our expected benefits? We talked earlier about alignment to strategies, as well as alignment to our different portfolios and business units. So we can see here our different strategies in the organization, and I can see how much money we're planning to spend for each one of these strategies by portfolio. So I can see our total investment by strategy, but I also see it here by portfolio. And then I could drill into that and look at the individual projects. So a lot of different views here that we can look at. We can also then monitor and track the quality of our overall portfolio. So you can set up various indicators to look at the quality. Obviously here we got demo data, so you typically wouldn't allow this many delayed milestones, etc. But typically that occurs a lot of times because you don't have visibility. But by having this type of visibility, you'll be able to keep those projects accurate and up to date, and then that way you'll be able to enhance the overall delivery of business outcomes. So here's another way of looking at the expected benefits associated with your investments and be able to track that over time. Kind of a really good starting point for benefit realization as you look at your various investments. So what I'd like to start off here in terms of the demo is to show how you can initially, or how an employee can initially submit a request. So they could come in here, your typical ServiceNow portal, and they could come in and make a request. Here's a coming in, here I could say it's a new demand, which we're going to highlight. Maybe it's a new enhancement. That's also available in ITBM. And you also got all of your traditional service desk as well as your service catalog items that you can pick from. In this example, we want to just come in and look at how we can come in and submit that demand. So the key power here is you've got one place for the employees to go to submit their requests. And in this case, they're submitting that demand they want to have invested in. And so as you can see here, we're just going to see a few data elements so that we make sure all that demand's captured. Best practice here is to make sure that we keep this simple. We don't overburden the end user so that all the demand comes in so we have that full visibility. So I can fill out this information and I can submit it, and then I will have a demand in the system. If I come over here, I'm now logged in as a business relationship manager, one that's managing that demand. And here's another configure dashboard page for a demand manager. So I could, if we're managing ideas, I could look at those ideas. Here I can go in and look at the demands. I can analyze that demand based on my financials. If I wanted to track that overall intake process, it's really good for executives to see all the demands that are coming in and that their organizations are making. So good visibility that you can provide here. We could obviously slice and dice the information here. So we could look at what's our investment by application or by business capability, by business unit. We can also then get a really good view into the forecasted spend here by the different cost types. I can also do that here, look at our overall resource forecasts. Two critical items to make sure that we can deliver on the investments for the organization. Next thing here, just to kind of highlight how I can use the power of the platform. If you're an existing customer, you're probably using the visual task boards. So when you think about the demand intake process, now we can do it in a more modern way. We can apply an overall visual task board, drag and drop the assignments, move things along the overall process. We have many customers using visual task board similarly for this with their project review board meetings, using this as a way to make those assignments and track the completion of those estimates through to approval. So just another way of looking at the data. So if we come back here and to our overview page, we want to go in and look at the current demands here in the system. So we're going to come in and look at this particular demand here. So this is a demand from one of their application rationalization initiatives. So they are now looking at how do we streamline and consolidate applications. So here with the demand, it goes through an overall process, various stage gates that can be established here. As you are scoping out this particular proposed project, as you're pulling together your estimates. There's also built-in capability here to do some screening, where you can actually survey various stakeholders, such as business owners, as an example, and get their feedback to help rate and rank this overall demand so that it gives the right visibility in terms of making those investment decisions. So the other thing we can highlight here, you can have your different attributes of your demand. So you can really start to look at investment class or investment types. These can be adjusted based upon the way you classify projects in your organization, but it gives you an ability to understand how are we investing based on these different types? What is the right level of investment for each type? And so it gives you that type of visibility here by applying those different attributes. The business case can be filled out here within the form, so you don't need to do an attachment, but you could attach it if you have a template and you want people to just fill out a Word document. You could do that, but here you can do it all on the platform, put in your business case and fill out the information. It'll be here. It'll also then be shared with the project manager, so he or she, when they are initiating the project, they have all the information they need to assess the project and put together their plan. Next here, we can kind of look at the financials. So we're going to see total costs, but also CapEx and OpEx plan costs. You can see here that you can actually forecast your overall financial return, and financial benefits are also available here within the demand. Those of you that are using ServiceNow today, as you know, with each form, an entity here in ServiceNow, you've got your quick links here, and then we've got our related list items. So here we can see our resource forecasts, our cost plan forecasts here. This is where we can see our overall benefit plans to help drive overall benefit of revenue for this particular project. So what we like to kind of highlight here is where I would come in and look at managing the resource forecasts. So here at the demand level, you can put together your overall resource forecast. And this is going to assist in a lot of that strategic portfolio planning. So I can see here that we're going to request a DBA and a product owner for X number of hours. So we can come in and actually add in another a resource forecast if we like. So we can select a specific resource here. So we could say we're going to look for a software engineer here. I can identify the number of hours, the duration which we would need them, and then add that to my overall resource forecast. What's nice here is you can have each one of these roles tied to a specific blended rate, and that will then drive and auto-calculate the associated costs for your labor expense. So I can now see here I've got 1,100 hours forecasted for this particular demand. The next thing that you'd want to do is identify and make sure that all of your financials have been forecasted appropriately before you're going to present this project for funding and approval. So what you can see here is I've got multiple cost plans, but I can see here the software engineer that we just added, it automatically created my cost plan, added in the dollar amount for that based upon the blended rate. And so I've now got an overall planned forecast here of 142,000. We haven't confirmed the budget yet, but I can see here that we've actually identified a financial return here of 480,000. You'll also see here I have some non-labor of my software. So I have my software cost here, and I can actually look at this from a monthly perspective as well and kind of see what our planned spend is here by month. If I wanted to add a new additional cost plan, I could come in here as an example and say maybe I need to look at hardware. I could add in additional hardware estimates associated with this. I would then identify the actual time period for this. So I would put in here, just kind of keep it here with the data that I have here for the demo instance here. So I would start this in the May timeframe here. Then I would put this into July. I'm going to identify my cost type here as hardware, and then I'm going to submit that. So I've now increased here my overall cost here to 150,000, and I would continue to go through that process. So at this point, I'd probably send it to a survey. If you'd like to do that, you don't have to do surveys, and you can just move it over and submit it for approval. So that's how you go through the overall demand process. So once you're done with the demand process, and as the business relationship manager working with the business executives, they could come over here and utilize the demand workbench and start to look at assessing the different proposed items. And so I have a chance to look at those. I can look at the overall scoring of those items, and as well as I can kind of get a visual view of the risk and value heat map here of the different demands. So it gives me a great view here, looking at my scoring, helping me with my final prioritization activities. So that's what I would continue to do here as I'm looking at demands. Once I've kind of confirmed the scoring there, I want to come in and then look at our strategic plan. And so this is where I create my different portfolios, and we can then start doing some strategic planning here by portfolio, or we could bring all projects and demands in together as well. In this case, I wanted to go into the HR portfolio here and look at how we would go through that strategic planning. So this is done by each fiscal year here in the system, and then I would select various projects and demands here. I can see that some that were previously in flight or previously approved, and I can see that selection. I can see the overall budget requirements, and then I can see the associated resource requirements on those items as well. So this is kind of an example of the HR portfolio. Previously, I went in here to the IT transformation portfolio here. This is for a different fiscal year, and I can see the overall budget requirement. I can then see the capacity of resources and the resource needs if we were to work on these selected initiatives here. So in this particular portfolio, we're seeing some of those demands coming in. We're seeing projects coming in, and we can view those here on the overall timeline. What you can do here is you're doing your strategic planning. You can start making some of those decisions here and be able to perform some what-if analysis. So as we come through here, what if we were to do this additional demand? Demands are kind of highlighted here in purple versus the blue being the projects, green being your programs. Actually, let me go back here. I clicked on the wrong button. So this is how I can kind of come in and manage and perform some of that what-if analysis here in the system. So we'll come back over here to the HR portfolio. We'll make this real time. And so this is how I typically, for demos, come in and unselect all of our projects. As I mentioned, some organizations are really starting to look at it from a monthly basis. What should we be working on that might require certain things to be put on hold or stopped. So here, if we looked at it from a clean slate, we could identify and do some filtering here based upon priority. We can also look at things from a rank as well. And at that point, then we say, okay, what if we were to come in here and do the different priority one initiatives? We can then see how that would be impacted from our overall costs as well as from our resources. So here in this portfolio, they don't have much resource need, so that's why we're not seeing the resource need here. So at this point, we could come and say, yeah, that looks good. That's what we would like to invest in. They could then hit confirm. It'll take the actual demands, approve those, and those will then become projects, and those can be created and opened with a template, thereby saving the project manager's time and effort. So that's how you kind of go through that high-level what-if strategic planning. So next, what we'd like to do then is move over and view things from an overall project manager perspective. So next here, I'm logging in as a project manager, and typically I see project managers landing here at the project workspace. So it's a great visualization here where I can see all of my projects that I'm responsible for. I can then see the overall health of those projects. I can see some high-level metrics of what's going on. So it really helps me see where I'm at. At that point, then I can determine, okay, let's go in and manage one of the projects. So here in the planning console, we've got multiple capabilities. It's all about protecting this investment. It's all about making sure that we can deliver on our commitments from the approved demand. So here from a navigation perspective, I could toggle to other projects here. You can configure and set up, it's basically like a dashboard. You can configure and set up various KPIs that you want project managers to be able to view and manage at the project level. So a lot of different views from tie cards, tracking your costs and benefits, to tasks and assignments. You'll notice here with this particular project, it's a hybrid project. We're not only tracking and managing tasks, but we're actually tracking and managing Agile stories as well. Definitely a value and benefit here of the platform. So next, if we come over and look at the details tab, this is where a lot of the information flows across from the demand. So it's all on the platform. That information is going to flow across here as that project is created. We'll be able to see here the business case information that came across from the demand. We'll be able to see the alignment to the corporate strategies here for this particular project. So we understand at a high level what we're looking to achieve with this initiative. I can continue down here and do my analysis here of the business case as a project manager. I'd also be able to come over here and look at the financials. So I could see what our original plan costs are. In this case, I can start to look at what's going on from an overall actuals perspective here. So these are all the financials that are rolling up here at the project level. I've got my various dates that you'd expect. I've got a lot of the attributes that we saw on the demand side. Also, those of you that are using ITSM or maybe using application portfolio management, I can link and tie both my demands and my projects to the various business capabilities we're looking to invest in, as well as the business applications, i.e. these items are definitely CIs as part of the configuration management database. So I can kind of view that information here. As you can see here, I can manage it through and align it to the PMBOK methodology, initiating, planning, executing, delivering here. A lot of times there's questions there, but that's all about delivering and releasing the solution, and then the closing phase of your projects. This is also a great place to look at managing a lot of your controls. So your risk log, your issue log, decisions, actions, definitely your project change requests can all be managed here with your different logs all in one central place. Next, wanted to highlight the planning console. So this is where you would expect you'd have your typical project schedule. So about 80% of the capabilities from Microsoft project that you have here, I like it that way. That way it's not over-engineered, it's not over automating things that I don't want it to automate. So you can see here that with this project, it's a hybrid project. So I've got various sets of waterfall traditional tasks. I've got some of my resources assigned to those tasks here, both for the initiating and the planning phases with this. And then you can see here I've got a development sprint. So we're actually got a sprint going on, so we can actually manage and track that as well. In terms of updating with your project plan, right, I can double click on the different elements here, double click on who I need to assign. I can actually adjust the graphics here to adjust the dates, so I don't need to do that here within the project itself. So next here, I wanted to go over to the project workbench and kind of show you how project managers can manage their projects based on their preference. So in addition to that traditional waterfall method, we can now manage it here from our workbench, where I can look at each phase as a project manager, see my list of tasks. I can update those tasks based on the platform capabilities here, update each individual element on my task, update my dates here. I can update the state here. So it really makes it real easy to update my tasks. Also in this view here, I've got a great visibility into all of the stories that the Agile development team is working on. So these stories here are shown as stories that are on the platform. So the team's actually using their Scrum and their stand-up boards to manage the work, manage the backlog. But here as a project manager and a PMO, we're getting visibility into that work. So we're understanding what's being accomplished and how much value is being generated here from the development team. And last but not least, a lot of organizations love to use the visual task board here. So whether it's a completely traditional waterfall project or a hybrid or agile like we're seeing here, I can still manage the work here, like with a visual task board or Kanban board. So I can even look at here is a list of my waterfall tasks. I can still manage them in this fashion. I can do my drag and drop here, make assignments of resources here. I can update the status, move on, all here within the visual task board. Same thing here from a sprint perspective. Typically, the Agile team is going to be doing that, but if you were collaborating with them and having to stand up with them, you can manage it in this fashion here, while you're also looking at all the milestones associated with your project. So very powerful to bring that all together in one view, as well as allowing the project managers to manage based on their preference. And next here, we can kind of look at the resource forecast. So those resource forecasts come across from the demand. And so I can see my associated estimates here by role, and then I can see the overall state of those resource plans. So each one of those requests would have submitted a request, and in this example, we can see that all those have been allocated from a resource manager. A project manager you'd expect it's going to run across gaps, but from time to time, and so they might need to create an additional resource plan so they can get additional resources to work on their project. So we'll just come in here and say we needed to add a few more hours here for DBA, and we can save that. And so now we would have updated the overall estimate for the project. That would have created that additional cost plan. So we probably need to go and do a project change request as well. But here for demo purposes, just to highlight how the project manager would manage that. What's also nice, project managers can get visibility into the staff so they understand who the potential resources are on the project. They could also see which different projects they're already working on outside of this project. So it really helps in their communication and dialogue with various managers and stakeholders to make sure they get the right resources to work on their project. So I could toggle over here and look at all the different analysts here. I could look at the financial auditors as an example. So it gives me great visibility as a project manager, helps streamline some of that communication that needs to occur. And next, we can come over and look at the financials here. So we can start to kind of really understand the financials and what's planned here month over month. So we're seeing in here the different resource plans that are auto-generated here. So we had that additional resource plan here for the DBA we just created. I can see a lot of my non-labor hardware software items in here as well. So a lot of power here in managing this. Also, what's nice is I can slice and dice the data. So a lot of times there's questions being asked, well, how much is CapEx, how much is OpEx here? So I can take one of these columns and be able to roll that up. So I can do it that way, or I could also then look at the cost type below that. So the CapEx, how much is labor, how much is hardware? So I can easily ask questions of the organization. So then last but not least, for project managers, they can come in and manage their status reports. And so this is the out-of-the-box status report. What's nice here is you have a consistent look and feel for status reports. You'll also be able to track an archive of all the different status reports. So that's really beneficial. As well as the PMs, reduces their effort. So about 20% of the information they would enter in. So they would just enter in their overall summary, executive summary each week. they would enter in the overall status and comments, and then they'd be able to see the trend over time. And then as they're just updating the project, the key milestones would flow in here. Any risks, their issues, action items, change requests would flow in here. What's really nice too is this can be fully configured. So we've done many just one-page status reports, almost like a PowerPoint slide you typically see. So sky's the limit here on how you like to have this formatted and configured for a status report. You can also create a copy as you create a new one. You could print, save this to PDF, and then distribute this out to team members. But everyone that has access to the system will be able to see the archive of various status reports. So that's how we can get into managing status reports and
John,
managing projects. Yes, go ahead.
Well, real quick, I think one key note that I think is overshadowed in some of this often, right? As companies have various go to green meetings, and they have various meetings to check status. I know back when I was on the customer side, we had a 4-hour CIO meeting where we went over the status of all projects, and we talked about what was slipping and things of that nature. I think the power that I found from ServiceNow, and one key advantage is not even just outside of managing the project, these status reports, everything living and breathing in ServiceNow, you're no longer now having every project manager build a new PowerPoint every week and saving that off. And then when you're in those meetings, you're not also trying to flip over from screen share from project manager to project manager. Literally, you have one console that everybody's working in. It actually helped me, and I know, again, you talk about time savings, and we're all trying to save money. It knocked down 4 hours of a meeting down to 2 hours every month, just in the transitions, and not to mention all the prep work and things like that. That we typically don't even count in project time in a lot of our estimates and the things that we talk about as those soft savings. So I don't want to overlook the fact that creating all of this information in here will actually save exponential amount of time in just managing and status updates and meetings and things like that for the internal that typically don't go into creating the product of the project that's at hand.
No, very good point. And what I wanted to highlight here next feeds right into that. So the investment portal, we have many of our customers use those executive meetings, those project review meetings, those project status meetings across the enterprise. They set up various investment portals. And so you can lay this out with the different data elements. And what's nice, any attribute on your projects can be listed here. So I can see my different projects. I can see my proposed projects, see the strategies and the portfolios and the departments these are all supporting. But what's nice is, like you said, you don't have to have PowerPoint decks, but also when you're in those meetings, typically everyone asks a question that can't be answered in the pre-formatted PowerPoint deck, the old way. But in the new way with ServiceNow, someone can ask that question, well, how much are we spending by strategy? Well, with a click of a button, I can tell them how much we're spending by strategy. Okay, great, but how much of that is by portfolio? Okay, great, well, how much of that is by a department? So we can look at that strategy, we can look at here that portfolio, and we can see the actual amounts in each one of these areas. So here in HR, that's just the investment portal that I have here, but I can quickly break that information down here. So if we just wanted to look at it by department, so we can see strategy by department, I can see the total dollar amounts, and then from there I can look at my individual projects or demands. So really powerful here to be able to not only provide the information that's needed here to assess the overall performance and health of your projects. You can also then look at the timeline associated with your projects, look at the key milestones, see how those are parlayed up against your different projects. Doesn't require all that time and effort like you mentioned for PowerPoint decks and presentations and such. Just as a function of managing the work, that information is now available. And then if you needed to jump into the financials and have that meeting with IT finance or with the CFO, we can jump into and really start to look at the CapEx, OpEx, and the various labor, non-labor items, and we can slice and dice that information. So very powerful here. They've also set this up specifically so you could identify some of your company-specific KPIs. So we typically do that a lot with organizations as part of the implementation. So if they wanted to look at current, month budget versus actuals versus variance, same thing with this current year budget, actual, and variance. Those are common ones that we typically configure for customers. So that's going to be here out of the box, so they'll be able to see that whenever they roll in here into the investment portal. And then just the power of being able to answer those questions here with a click of a finger is really beneficial for organizations. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Andy. And not sure if you guys used the investment portal, had it then, but we're seeing a lot of organizations set up various portals and just use it to follow their agenda in those executive review meetings. So we're getting close to the end here, so we kind of wanted to open things up here, but a couple of items to highlight. So the question is, what do I do next? This looks really good. How do I proceed forward? So we've typically seen multiple starting points for customers, but we always like to focus on what's the goal and objective, what are the outcomes they're looking for. That's going to help drive the overall approach. Typically after sessions like this, we can have our own deep dive session with you and the customer to understand your goals and objectives, the capabilities you're looking to accomplish. Once we've done that, that can immediately go to an implementation plan to implement. Or it could go to, hey, let's do an end-to-end assessment. Let's really create an assessment. Let's identify our gaps in the organization, both from a capability and a technology perspective, and then create a roadmap. So multiple different starting points for organizations. For those that are looking just to be very tactical, they already know the value. They already understand that we need to get full visibility into our demand. We need to start making better decisions based on the current market conditions. We can come in, do a deep dive, discuss your implementation requirements, and move right into a rapid start implementation. We can also help you with your business case. We can also collaborate with ServiceNow for business value assessment so that you understand and can have specific numbers based upon the returns that you would see with your organization, something that you would be able to justify to the executives to make those funding decisions. And then last but not least, just wanted to remind everyone about the upcoming knowledge event. It's a great opportunity here. You talked about value. 20,000 people normally go there and spend $1,500 to go, but basically now you're going to be able to get that for free digitally. So definitely take advantage of attending the conference. So Andy, I'll kind of turn it over to you, see if you have any other final thoughts here before we open it up for some questions and can discuss next steps.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and definitely thank you for going through this. I think it's extremely valuable, especially in times where budgets are constrained and things like that. We've got to bring visibility, and unfortunately, most customers, even me when I was on that side, you have very little information to know really how truly well you're doing or not doing. So at minimum, getting this type of a workflow in is going to help you set those baselines and even understand what's going on in your environments that are hidden today. But these are key aspects of transformation, and I think the one thing that I would tag to this, and definitely we love from a partnership with ResultsPositive, focusing on these type of key factors, and then how those things tie into your ITSM functions, right? As you're releasing this functionality and getting it to market, how do we also manage the defect release so that we can minimize the ITSM support functions for break fix and things of that nature? I think that's the power of having everything in ServiceNow to me. And definitely this journey to excellence and getting your backlog and getting things delivered and planned and managed is all key. And then that ties into your testing and your Q&A. That really drives success, so that your ITSM functions aren't burdened with just putting out garbage code and things of that nature that have to be managed on the backside. And ServiceNow is the only platform out there that can manage that entire full spectrum end to end, all in one platform.
Yeah, in addition to that, thanks, Andy. I appreciate that. Just getting that visibility, removing those hidden investments that are going on that could blindside us is really key, and just the power of the platform. Also, when you look at investments, a lot of times, we're trying to make sure that the project managers are focused on delivering value versus doing admin work. So a lot of times we have questions about, well, how do I track the actuals? Where's that actuals information coming from? And yes, you can do time management that can come in and flow into the system, but they're saying, well, I want to arm my project managers as well as executives with actuals from the general ledger. Well, ServiceNow is very easy to integrate. One of the simplest to integrate an enterprise solution that we've found over the last 15 years. And so we have a lot of integrations that we do with customers, bringing in that financial information in from your ERP system. And that way it just feeds into the system. Project managers will have that up-to-date actuals on an ongoing basis, so they're making the right decisions and alerting executives of what needs to be done. So you're right, you got the power of the platform consolidating solutions, but also you have the ease of getting the data in from your financial perspective. So I totally agree with Andy here. We really enjoyed partnering together and helping customers get access to these capabilities and practices so that they can get better outcomes with their project investments. So just pause here, see if we have any other questions from those participating today.
Around the adoption from a ServiceNow perspective and a PPM, there's definitely some differences, and you having a long history in the field, right? I've used Rally Dev, I've used version 1, I've used Jira, I've used all sorts of project management tools. I'd be interested in your feedback as well in reference to the comparison of the adoption of ServiceNow and the usage of it compared to maybe some of the other tools that you've worked with, or client feedback that you've seen over the years of implementing ServiceNow.
Yeah, it's a good point. The biggest challenge for PPM solutions has been adoption, but we're seeing a lot higher rates of adoption within ServiceNow. We're seeing organizations migrate from other PPM solutions into ServiceNow. And why are they doing that? A lot of times they're doing that but for ease of use. They're also doing that for the power of the platform. And so that's really key. And then when you talk about visibility, having visibility and being able to share that in those investment portals, being able to share it to executives, that drives increased organizational adoption. And so the power of everything being on the same platform really drives that adoption as well. But also it is important to have ease of use. It's important to be able to have the core capabilities. And I would also tell you that it's interesting that organizations have learned over time, especially in this PPM space, that they've got pretty complex and pretty rigorous in their solutions in the past. And they're realizing the value of keeping it more simple, keeping it more of a baseline solution, and having more flexibility. And so that combined with the ease of use is really helping with the adoption. So I'd say it's probably 20–30% higher adoption rates with ServiceNow that I see with other PPM solutions. Well, thanks everyone for attending today. We really appreciate it, and hope everyone has a good day. And please remember to be safe and well in these times. So thank you.